Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and today we have another great guest. I'm so excited to hear her story. I've heard little bits and pieces of it, but I know it's going to knock your socks off. Mauri moved here to Arizona from Virginia recently, and we got connected on Facebook. We decided to meet up. We have similar interests as far as working with Christian-led individuals who are business owners, want to help build a community very similar to what you might have experienced back in the day in a smaller town feel where everybody knows each other. Everybody has the same interest in success. Everybody wants to help support each other's businesses. And we just really connected. Then I heard a little bit more of her story, and I was like, man, somebody who has that much transformation in their life and not necessarily changes directions, but increases focus in the direction they're going. I think their voice needs to be heard and it needs to be shared. And that's why I decided to invite her on to the podcast today and share her voice with you, because if you can take 1 or 2 or 3 pointed questions out of this episode that you get to go and ask yourself and seek out the answer for yourself, then your life could change forever. And not just your life, but your family's life, your spouse's life, your children's life, and your relationship with all of those. And that's what I love about this, is that we have that ability to change lives one podcast at a time. So thank you, Mauri, for showing up. I'm so grateful for you taking the time out of your day to hop on here. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Talk about kind of where you came from. What was your childhood like? How did you experience this big transformation in your life? And why are you so passionate about building the business that you're in today?
Well, thank you for having me on. I love to tell my story because it was quite a transformation and it hasn't stopped. It continues. I'm a work in progress. I grew up in North Dakota and I lived in Virginia in the DC area for most of my adult life. And while I was out there, I was really big into different businesses. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years, and I had taken a lot of businesses from 0 or almost 0 to over $1 million in the first 12 months. And everyone was saying, like, how do you do that? And they wanted to do the same thing. So I was just helping everybody. That was my thing. I want to help everyone to do what I'm doing. And I was very successful. And then at one point, we decided to move back to North Dakota to be with our moms because our fathers had passed away. And I sold my last business in Virginia, sold our house, and moved back to North Dakota. And it was great when I got there because I was in a 21-year marriage. I was healthy, I was wealthy, I was semi-retired. I mean, life was really great. I thought, wow, I'm pretty young for all this. This is wonderful. But I say semi-retired, I needed to have a little, income coming in. So I started a couple little businesses. One was a cabinet design and sales, and I had one decent builder. And then I decided, well, I've been helping all these people all these years to grow their businesses. And I did that for free because I never needed the money. And I thought, I'll do that as a little side business. And with that business, I decided to write a couple of books, put them on Amazon, just business to help people. Well, everything was going great. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. And first came the divorce, which I couldn't stop. And then the next thing that happened was the person I sold the business to, they just quit paying. And then they ended up filing bankruptcy. And there kind of went my semi-retirement. And then the one builder that I was, designing and selling cabinets to quit building. As you can kind of see a trend here. These are just the highlights, by the way. There would never be a podcast long enough to hear the entire story. So I just go through the highlights. And after that, I got really, really sick and I was literally dying. I was in the hospital for several days and they're like, at one point on day 5, I think it was, they're like, we think we might have to do an emergency surgery because we need to we need to figure out what's going on here. This is not good. You never want to hear the doctor say this is not good. And day 6, I have this surgery, and I was pretty sure that I wasn't going to make it. I was on death's door for sure. I was okay with that though, because I was talking to God, and I'm like, you know what? If it's time for me to go home, it's time for me to go home. It's your call. And I was making arrangements for my dog because that's about all I had left. I had someone ready to take her in case I didn't make it. Well, I did come out of the surgery, and obviously I'm sitting here, so I did. But when I got out of the surgery and 10 hours later, and I opened my eyes and saw a clock, I'm like, well, didn't make it home to Jesus, did I? I'm still here. And that's fine. God has a plan for me. Well, when I got out of the hospital, I had a long recovery, and I couldn't work for a while. And so you can kind of see a pattern here. I'm alone, and I'm broke, and now I have hospital bills, and I'm really, really broke and in debt and very sick. And I laugh about it now because I think, you know what, had I not gone through all that, I wouldn't have the transformation and the passion for the things I'm doing today. And I wasn't laughing at the time, but I did have serious faith that God would get me through it all. I never worried about anything. It's like, okay, what's next? I mean, he'll get you through anything that comes your way. And so here I am. Finally, I'm pretty much recovered, and through all of it, by the way, all of my bills all got paid supernaturally. I still, to this day, I look back and I think I just can't believe I made it through all of that. But I know that God was there through everything and got me through it all. Well, when it was time for me to start working and stuff, I just asked God, I said, like, what is my purpose here? You kept me here for a reason, or you'd have taken me. Like, there's got to be a plan for me. And what is that? And I just kept hearing over and over the words, making God number one in your business, as a title of a book. And I didn't aspire to be any author. I had, like I said, I put a couple books on Amazon, but that was just to help my consulting business. It wasn't because I was aspiring to be an author. And for a while, I was excited about it because I'm like, oh God, you gave me mad business skills, and I've always ran my business in a godly way, and this is going to be exciting. And then all of a sudden I freaked out because, like, I'm not a pastor, and I never went to seminary school or any of that kind of stuff. So I kind of put it off, and I asked for help with, at church and friends. I'm like, okay, someone's got to help me out here. And nobody did. And then finally one day I'm like, you know what? I got to be obedient. So I sat down at the laptop and I typed in the title, and I said, well, now what? And I don't know how to describe it other than, in today's terms, I would call it a Holy Spirit download, because the words just started flowing through me to the laptop. And I learned from it. As I was reading what was coming through my hands, I'm like, wow, God, this is great. I'm actually learning stuff. He pulled out experiences from my past where he had worked miracles in my business and in my life. And that was really exciting. And I felt bad because had I been one to journal, I would have remembered all of these great things that had happened in the past that he had done for me. But I hadn't started journaling quite to that point yet. And I highly recommend it, by the way. And I'll talk more about that later. But had I done that, I would have probably, one, had more experiences to put in the book, but two, he wouldn't have had to dig them out of my memory for me. So after the book was written, then I'm like, well, God, now what do you want me to do? And next was a workbook, because, something to work through the book with. And then I said, okay, and that's all on Amazon. And I got the book was bestseller. Everything was going great. But then I'm like, well, there's got to be more. And I have to tell you, when I was younger, I had tried to disciple people. And at one point in time, I had an experience that didn't go well. And I said, God, I don't want to do that anymore because I'm not any good at it. And so please don't make me do that. And then I was reading Romans 12:2 one day, and I said, I want to be renewed. Like, God, just make me a better servant, a better person. Nothing specific. God, just renew me, make me better, make me a better person. And be careful what you wish for. So he definitely made some changes in me. He changed the desires of my heart. And I think, all my life I kept hearing, God will give you the desires of your heart. And there were times when I'm like, well, I know what I want and I know what I don't want. And I was pretty adamant. I was kind of stubborn. I'm like, well, that's not going to change. And all of a sudden, after I had asked for that and prayed for that, things started changing in me, things that were shocking me. I'm like, wait a minute. How come I don't really want to do that anymore? And how come I want to do that? And so one of the biggest things was he put the desire on my heart to be on fire for discipleship. The one thing that I had begged him not to have me do, all of a sudden, that's all I want to do is lead people to Jesus. And I'm like, oh, this isn't me. Like, what's going on? And so that was the purpose for me doing the book and the workbook. Now I've got to get out there and teach people how to use their businesses to disciple. Statistically speaking, business owners, they come in contact with way more people than non-business owners. And they have like a little bit of influence in the marketplace. And also, statistically speaking, the marketplace is the best place for people to hear about Jesus. Think about it. When people really need him, they don't just walk into a local church because they don't really know that they need him to begin with and they're not sure where to go. But if we're in the marketplace and we're talking about it and we're showing people what it's like to follow him, we can lead many people to Jesus with our businesses. And so that's a big part of what the book and workbook are all about. So my passion right now is to continue to use my tools that, the book and the workbook and everything that God created through me to help people to do that, to help business owners on how and why and give them the tools to do it. And then I also wanted to go another step further, and I kept asking, like, well, what should I do next? And then an opportunity came along for me to start a servant leader group in my community, in my local community. And what's exciting is it's a hybrid of local community and online, where we can bring people together. Community is a huge word. I don't know, sometimes people just kind of like, the community, they don't really think of how powerful it is. But when we're in a community together, working together, lifting each other up, helping each other out, holding each other accountable, it's amazing what we can do for our lives and our businesses and for others. And it's an exciting place to be right now. So I have a lot on my plate, promoting the book and the workbook and small groups to do it. And then community service groups to work together and be in community with each other. And my passion just keeps getting hotter and hotter for all of this because I've seen so many wonderful things happen. I've heard so many beautiful testimonies from all of it that it just gives me so much encouragement to keep on moving. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Cool. Well, hey, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that journey. I know there's other people who listen to this who are thinking, what's my journey? What's that calling for me? And maybe it is discipleship. Maybe your calling is the one thing that you don't want to do. And sometimes the things you avoid the most are the things you need the most. I know for me, this is a silly little example, but it's something that isn't, I had to make a choice. I don't like being cold. Generally, it's not my favorite thing. And I got to kind of a plateau in my business where I had to determine, what is the thing I don't want to do? And am I willing to do the thing I don't want to do? And it can be something simple, but for me, it was jumping in a cold bucket of water or my swimming pool when it's freezing. And I really don't like it. So what do? I do it every morning because I really don't like it. And to think about, like, what's the thing that you avoid doing or that you really don't want to do? That's probably the thing you need to do the most. There was a past guest of mine, I think his name is Matthias Firon. I don't know how to say his name. He's from Scandinavia, but he has a rule in his life that he said, if I must, I can't. And if I can't, then I must. And obviously there's like probably some caveats to that rule, but basically if you feel like there's a burning house on fire and you have to get something done in your business, then his rule for himself is, if I ever feel like I have to do something, then I refuse to do it. And anytime I feel like, there's just no way I can make that happen, then that's when he commits to it. And he says, I've got to make it happen, just to force himself out of this paradigm that something else is in control of him, but that he's in control of his situation, that something else is going to control his situation, but he's going to control it. So I think those are huge things when we're talking about that. I want to go back just a little bit. What was your family situation like in North Dakota? I've been in North Dakota. There's not much there. So how many siblings did you have? What was it like being raised in North Dakota? Because most people have never even heard the name of North Dakota. And then the people who have, they're like, why would anybody live there? And then once you go there, you really understand why nobody lives there. But like, what was it like growing up there?
Oh my gosh. The only reason I lived there is because I was born and raised there. And the soonest I was able to get out of there, I did. I had wonderful parents. I'm really grateful. I had great parents and great Christian upbringing. I mean, I can't complain about that. That's the good part. Beautiful family. The not so good part is, I have to tell you, the sun doesn't shine very much there. It's cold for about 7 to 8 months out of the year. And even sometimes in the summer, I remember a couple of summers where I was wearing a jacket on the 4th of July. And the saddest part is there's nothing to do. It's a low populated state. There's only 700,000 people in that entire state. And there's more than that in the, East Valley of Phoenix. Mm-hmm. So it's very, it's a boring place, and there's not a lot to do. And if you really love the cold and the snow, you can go snowmobiling or cross country skiing. I mean, we didn't even have any mountains, so you could do real skiing. We had to go out of state for that. So sledding, a little ice skating or something, but I don't like to be cold. So in the wintertime, it was really hard for me to be inside all the time or go out and freeze. So it was not pleasant for me to grow up in that respect. The weather really played a factor in our lives, because you had to plan around the weather for things. And there were a lot of things that could not happen because, there's a blizzard, so we're going to stay inside. And even just when I was a kid, there weren't any school buses where I lived. So we had to walk to school. And
both ways, rain, snow every day. Right?
Tell the truth on that one. Now, my parents would have told you that, but I went downhill on the way to school and uphill on the way home. And, not everybody shoveled their sidewalks. So sometimes you were trudging through 2 feet of snow. In fact, I didn't even like trick-or-treating on Halloween and all that, because there was always a lot of snow on the ground. It was like, this isn't worth it. I don't need the candy that bad to go outside and trudge in the snow. I'm like, I don't like this. And so it was a good place as far as we were really close knit. It was a fairly, not a small town, but not a big city either. You knew everybody pretty much. I mean, it was a community and all. It was tough. It's a brutal life living there. And so when I went back, it was really hard for me to go back from Virginia. Virginia's beautiful. The weather is pretty decent. And it's a nice place. And to go back there was a very difficult choice, but family comes first. And I have to tell you, after living and then I went back to Virginia again before I came down here to the Phoenix area. And if you can see a little trend there, I keep going further south, and I think I've hit my hot, sweet spot.
Yeah, no,
I'm really enjoying it.
It's been cold this this winter, actually. It's been fairly cold comparatively. So yes. Yeah, I know. I will, even in Arizona, be wearing sweaters and long pants probably up until mid-April. When it starts hitting the 90s, that's when I say, okay, it's time to take a little bit of clothes off. June is hot. Yes. It's like 110 is hot. I don't know. It's hot at that point, but it's worth it. It's worth to have 7 or 8 months of good weather to deal with 2 or 3 bad months versus the reverse. So did you have other siblings or? Oh,
yes. I had a sister. She's younger than me. She still lives back there. She actually likes North Dakota. Her and her family, they enjoy it, and that's fine.
That's fine. Well, that is good. The reason I ask, I'm the 7th of 11 kids, and most of my siblings like small, very rural areas. I don't know if I'm the only one or one of the only ones in my family that would much rather be in a bigger city. than in a small town. And so it's just fascinating to kind of hear how that goes in. I'm going to ask something as far as so you sell your businesses. You mentioned that your divorce came out of the blue, or at least maybe not out of the blue completely, but talk us through that. And you can get as detailed as you want, but I think that this is something that a lot of people struggle with when sometimes they focus too much on things outside of their relationship, or things just happen in the relationship and they start to choose identities out of those experiences. And I haven't experienced that from you. And so that's why I want to figure out, like, what was that like for you? What was the cause? How did you get through it? I know that was years ago, but let's talk about it for a minute.
Well, it was tough. I mean, when I got married, I made the vow, till death do us part. And one big valuable lesson I learned is that no matter how hard you try, you cannot keep somebody in your life. You cannot make them love you. You can't force another person on anything. You can pray all day long, and in God can work wonders, but it depends on what that person has to be open to it. And for years, I tried to keep it together. It was not a great marriage. It was in the beginning for a number of years, and then it slowly started getting, there's serious issues. And I wanted it to work, and I did everything I could trying to get it back to where it was in the beginning, and everything I could possibly think of. But it wasn't up to me. In the end, he was gone, and that was it. Like, there was nothing that I was going to do to change that or to change him. And it was tough because even though the marriage wasn't perfect, I do miss being married. Like, I'm not a loner. I'm not one of those people that likes to be alone. Now I'm very independent. And all these years now I've been living on my own, just like I did before I got married. And didn't go straight from living at home with my parents to getting married. I'd lived on my own for a long time. So it isn't that. I mean, very independent. And as far as like business and things like that, all of that, I can do on my own. But I don't like to be alone. I mean, I don't know how many people really, truly like that. Like, I want to share my life with someone. So that was the hardest part for me, was to adjust to it just being me. And like, where do I go from here? And I'm comfortable with myself. I'm okay. I still keep praying that Mr. Right is somewhere here in Arizona. You never know.
He's here, not in North Dakota.
Oh yeah, exactly. I don't want to go back there. But if not, I mean, Jesus will get me through this life. I'm not worried about that. But it is hard. And for anybody out there that's ever gone through it, I'm sure they can understand what I'm talking about. And I say to people, do your best to make it work. I mean, everything you possibly can. Don't be so quick to like throw in the towel on something as serious as marriage. That's one of the probably the most serious decision we make in life. Don't throw in the towel. Make it, whatever it takes to make it work. But it still takes two people. And you can't, we are not given the power to force another human being into anything. And you know what, to be honest, that's quite all right, because if you have to force somebody to love you and want to be with you, that's not really going to feel very good, is it? Like, don't you want someone to be with you because they want to be with you and because they love you? It reminds me of God. He gave us free will for a reason. He wanted us to choose him, because he could have forced us. He's the one that's got the power to do whatever. And he could have forced us to love him, but he doesn't. He wants it to be our choice. Mm-hmm. And I feel the same when, I don't want to force somebody to love me. And I don't think anybody really would like that kind of love. So sometimes you just got to let go. And I leaned on God a lot through all of it, because I'm like, now what? Like, this is not fun, but I'm okay. Yeah. You do make it through the other side.
Well, I think that's kind of leads into your business and your book, like making God number one in your business. What I think is fascinating is, I think that in general, if we make God number one in our life, I operate my life like a business. I operate my family like a business, and I operate my business like my family. They all operate the same. And in a lot of respects, people think, well, how do you do that? There's different needs for the business or for the personal. But I think if you're focusing on the other thing you mentioned, which is faith, faith is so important. And I actually think, kind of like what you said, business owners or businesses are the best place for people to hear about faith. I think faith is, I guess a better way of saying is, I believe that business owners, along with farmers, which I believe own a business, they're some of the most faithful people out there, whether they believe in God or a higher deity or not. They're using the principle of faith actively in their life. And every business owner has to operate on faith to a degree. They have to believe that if they take certain actions, there's going to be a result, even though the result doesn't exist yet, right? That's part of their action. And when we get these results that we didn't plan on, i.e. maybe a marriage that ended different than we thought it was going to be, or children that were raised and turned out maybe not the way we thought they were going to be raised, or business relationships, or we move somewhere and it turns out different, that weather turns out different than a day. It doesn't matter what it is. We have to act and have a plan and act in faith. And then when that doesn't turn out the way we thought it does, you have two options. And some people choose the option of saying, well, faith doesn't work, or God's not real, or whatever it is. And I tend to say, well, if it didn't work out, then what I did learn is that what I did worked to get that result, which means what I need to do is do it differently, do it faster, do it better, whatever the case is, to get the desired result that I want. And sometimes people say, well, the course of action is not working. Sometimes you need to just get better at the course of action. You need to be doing something long enough that you get the result. If you want to drill a well and you just make one little hole, it's not going to be there. But you have to keep digging and keep digging and keep digging until the well gets there. And so that's the same thing in our businesses. We have to keep acting in faith always. And so I love that you say that's the best place for it to kind of initiate a conversation is with business owners. I'm curious, what are some of the things that came out in the book of where God had kind of blessed you with that faith or given you that experiences? What are some of those experiences you had where you're like, oh, he definitely, hindsight 2020, he was definitely part of it?
Well, one that just comes to mind right now is I owned a couple of flooring stores for quite a few years, and I had a job that we were supposed to do. And for anybody out there listening, the construction industry is one of those industries that if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong no matter how good you are. And most people know that are in the industry. I had a contractor that came to me and wanted to start giving me all their work. And I was like really excited because this could really be good for business, right? And I took on a project, but there was a caveat to it. Like if you didn't have the job done by a certain time, they would get a fine for every day they were late with the job. So of course, that trickles down to the subcontractor, which was me. So the job had to be done on time. And if it wasn't, they were going to start taking money away from me. Well, everything was just fine. It was a tile job. And I ordered all this porcelain tile and everything was all on schedule. Everything was going to be just great. And then I get a call saying, we're sorry, but the tile is on back order for an indefinite period of time. We have no idea. It could be weeks. I don't even remember what they told me offhand as far as how long it was going to be, but it was not happening. The tile was not coming. And I'm like, okay, I'm always trying to pray about everything, and I'm like, well, okay, God, I need to do something about this. So I started looking for another vendor that had the same tile. I didn't tell the customer yet because I don't like to freak people out. Like if I can resolve something behind the scenes, you do that because you don't want to freak somebody out for no reason. And I'm calling around and I'm trying to find this tile. I'm trying to find somebody who's got this much of it in a warehouse somewhere. I mean, anything that I could do to get this tile. And just at the last minute, when I was going to have to call the client and say, the title's not going to be here next week, we don't know when it's coming. Oh, I was dreading that. All of a sudden, one of my employees comes running into the office and she said, you got to come and look at this. The title was delivered.
Wow.
So I called the vendor. I'm like, well, I thought it was on back order. They said, we do not have a clue what just happened. They had no, like I said, I'm paraphrasing a bit. All the details. This was quite a few years ago. All the details I don't remember at the moment, but I remember how I felt more than all the, like the amount of days and how it all worked out. But I remember how I felt. I'm like, God, thank you. You did this, because nobody could figure out how on earth this ever happened. It showed up on time. The job got done in time. Everything was just fine. And I truly believe it was because I was calm and faithful, and I didn't, I didn't freak out and worry. I just, just move forward and have the faith. You were saying business owners, everyone has some sort of faith. It's the truth, because faith is something you hope for that you can't see. I mean, you don't hope and have faith in something you already know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what would you have hope for if you already had everything? So you have to have faith that you're going to get what you're hoping for. And hopefully that made sense. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have, if you're not willing to take a leap of faith, if you're not willing to take a risk, which is a leap of faith, really, then you're not going to get very far in business. It's just part of being in business. You need to have faith that you're going to make it. You're going to do it. He's going to be there for you, and whatever you believe in, like you said. But faith is huge. And there were other times too. There's actually several experiences in the book about this, about how supernaturally something happened and no one can explain it. And when it was all said and done, everything worked out actually better than I had anticipated in the beginning. And that's the part I love. It doesn't always work that way, and things don't always work out. It could have gone the other way. It really, truly could have. I could have lost that customer and a whole lot of money. And I mean, it could have gone really, really bad. And I'm not saying I never had anything bad. As you heard my story, I've had plenty of tribulation in my life.
Ups and downs.
Yeah, I've not had a perfect life. I mean, I don't think anybody has. But there have been times when, I've held that faith and I've gotten through it all, and there's been something better on the other side. And that's what we have to hope for, is that no matter what comes along, there's a rainbow after the storm. And you got to focus on the rainbow that's coming. Even though you don't know what that rainbow is going to hold, you still have to focus on that instead of the storm.
Yeah. And what's fascinating is something else you mentioned when you were writing the book. Thank goodness that you were able to have him remind you of all those successes. But the other thing is, like, so many people, they don't have their success reel, right? People ask me, why do you have all these trophies and things in the background on your video? And, for when I first started in business, I thought the trophies that I got and the recognition that I got was to say good job. I thought it was to say good job. And I was like excited to be recognized to say good job. But what I learned was, as I started to climb the success ladder of business, when you're making very little money and you have a bad month or two, whatever, then your bad month fluctuates maybe a few $100s, good or bad. Right? It's very small fluctuation. Well, the same fluctuation in ratio could happen at a bigger scale. So now when you're making $250,000, maybe the fluctuation is no longer just a few $100s. Now it's a few $1,000s, right? So the waves get bigger the farther out into the journey you get. And what I've recognized now, or at least this is what I've come to the conclusion of, that these awards, they're not for me, or they're not for recognition of me. They're not even to show anybody else. They're in my office so that when I'm struggling, when I'm in the kind of the pit of despair and thinking, man, do I want to keep doing this? Then I get a look at those and say, you know what, Sam, you've helped so many people already. God's already blessed you with so much success and so much help that if you keep doing the thing, you'll keep getting a good result. You'll continue to be able to serve and bless people's lives. So the recognition is more of a reminder that I've already been blessed, and that I will continue to be blessed as I continue to work, not as a way to flaunt success to other people, but as a way to remind my own self that I will continue to be successful. And so many people, they don't have a success reel to play through their mind. They didn't keep track of their successes well enough to be reminded of all the gifts. And I think of in the Bible, the parable of the talents. God gives one person 5 talents, one person 3 talents, one person 1 talent. And the guy with 5 talents and the guy with 3 talents, they go and they duplicate those talents. They go grow those talents. The guy with 1 talent, rather than focusing on that success reel and trying to get 1 to 2, he says, oh, I'm just going to go bury this. They forget their success. They get rid of their trophies. They get rid of these things and say, oh, well, that's not important. Well, no, the talent God gave you is important, and it deserves to be shown some interest, because the more interest shown to it, the faster it will grow. And it's just a fascinating thing that if I was listening to this podcast, this would be one of the major questions that I leave with. What wins have I experienced so far in my life? Make a list. Review the list often, maybe every day, that you've won. God's blessed you. He's blessed you. He's blessed you. The more you cycle those blessings, the more you start to look for the other blessings. The more you start to look for the other blessings, the more you see the opportunity for even more blessings. So anyways, just a really cool thing that you brought out there. I don't know if you have something else you want to say about it.
Well, what a great segue to the journaling I was talking about before. I always encourage people to journal, and people are like, oh, I don't want to write or whatever. Well, talk into your phone or whatever. But when we keep track of things that we do, big things every day, and you only have to write 1 sentence, 1 page, it doesn't matter. It's not about anybody. Like you said, it's not for anyone else. It's so that 6 months from now, when you're going, well, I feel like all I've done is tread water the last few months and I haven't gotten anywhere. And you can go back in your journal and see where you were 6 months ago and go, well, I did move ahead. I really did get somewhere, but because it was gradual and slow, and because I wasn't remembering, I wasn't getting trophies to show me like you have. It's so encouraging. It can be a tool as well, in the respect that, okay, let's say you look at your journal and you go back and you're like, oh, yeah, I haven't got very far. And then try to discern why. Like, what is your journal telling you over the last 6 months or the last year or however, whatever, the last week? It doesn't matter how far you go back. What is that journal telling you that you did or didn't do that you should or shouldn't do? And it can be extremely encouraging, or it can be extremely helpful to show you how to go forward. And it can also tell you what God's been trying to tell you over the last however long you've been journaling too, because a lot of things we hear and see at a particular time, but they don't make sense to us until we go back and we look and we're like, oh, that's what that meant. You have to have a little bit of time. Things are coming to us in life in pieces. And it doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not. I don't know anybody who has gotten their entire life, the puzzle or picture of the puzzle in front of them in the beginning, where they've seen their entire life in front of them. Nobody gets that. Nobody has that. We get it all in pieces. And if you journal those pieces, you can go back and you can put some of the picture together that you forgot about. And I love the trophy thing. That is awesome. That is such a great analogy, because you can look back at that and go, you know what? I did help a lot of people. Or you can go back in a journal and say, you know what? I did accomplish, back then I made, $5,000 a month. Now I'm making $5,100 a month. Now $100 isn't a lot, but it's more than it was 5 months ago or 6 months ago. Or you can go, well, gee, I was making 5. Now I'm making 45. Where's the disconnect? Like, what did I do that I need to change? What do I need to do here to make it better? And it's just whatever you use, whether it's, a shelf with like trophies or whatever, something to show you, certificates, anything like that, or a journal where you write in every day, or something you speak into. It really doesn't matter what your method is of the tool that you use to get this down. It's just a way for you to remember, to keep it on your mind and to be able to go back and learn from it. So I love that. I love that we both have our way of doing it. It's just different.
Yeah. And something else that just came to me as you were talking is my mind was caught back on, who gave me the trophies? And then the next question to that is, who am I giving trophies to? Am I giving my wife trophies? Am I giving my children trophies? And maybe the trophy isn't an actual physical object, but is it something that I'm going out of my way to recognize, hey, this is a talent of yours. This is something that I recognize. You don't know me from Adam. Maybe it's somebody that I see do a good deed in the store, and do I go give them something that says, hey, you know what? I saw you did this, and you're like the number one citizen today in my mind. You're somebody that I aspire to be more like. Here's a little something that I can give you that's basically expressing my awareness of your greatness. And I think that that's something I could do better at. I can do better at sharing those and coming up. I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm now brainstorming on La La Land. What does that thing look like? How can I share and put somebody so that they can carry it with them? They can have it on their wall and say, hey, this made an actual real difference in somebody's life. I've done a good thing. I can continue to do good things. And I'm going to be happy to show what I did. Like right now, our kids are 7, 5, and 2. And whenever they do something at school, whatever, draw a picture, they come and they show it. They're proud of it. And there's a point in our childhood where we get told that showing what you're proud of is not good. You shouldn't do it. It's not humble. It's prideful, whatever. And I don't know what point that is for which individual. It's probably different for everybody. But what if we were more willing to share our gifts? Just like for you, hey, I didn't want to be a discipler. I didn't want to go and bring people there. That was the thing I didn't want to do. But now that God gave you this gift of renewed life, change, rather than saying, oh, do you want to come learn about Christ? You're saying, look, this is my calling. I'm going to share it with you with the full authenticity of this is who I am. This is what I'm excited about. And I'm not embarrassed or ashamed of that. This is who I am or my calling, because this is the talent that God gave me at this stage in my life. So just huge, man. We have so many more things we could cover, but we're out of time, which is unfortunate. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, learn more about your books, maybe be part of your business leaders network where they were able to connect with you and other spirit-led, faith-led business owners, where would they go about doing that?
Well, the best way to reach me is just an email, which is Mauri, it's Mauri, at MauriRene.com, which is MauriRene.com. And I am also I have a Facebook page, Mauri Rene. I'm on LinkedIn with Mauri Rene. My Facebook personal page is my full name, which is Maureen Kendall, but it's got Mauri Rene in parentheses, so you can find it. But the best way, would be to shoot me an email, because that way we can start a conversation. And if you want to purchase my books, you can go to MauriRene.com to the shop button, and all my books are on there, or they're on Amazon as well and Barnes and Noble. So pretty much anywhere you can find. My book is Making God Number One in Your Business, Integrating Faith with Business Practices. And there is a workbook you can purchase also to help you get through it. And what I highly recommend is getting a small group of business owners together to work on it, so you can lift each other up, expound on the tools, because it's not the be-all, end-all book. It can be expounded on with a group of people, and you can have accountability and have some fun with it. You're supposed to have some fun in this life too, Don't forget to have a little bit of fun with everything that you do. Enjoy what you do and love what you do. It's a happier place.
I love it. Well, we're going to end it there. I cannot think of anything else to add that is more important than the message you just shared. So thank you so much, Mauri, for coming on here, and we'll catch you guys later on the next time on the Fuel Your Legacy show. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.